Hey guys, what's up? It's Alex or Nuzz here, and today's video is going to be talking about bosses in Runescape 3 that I think could potentially be reworked or buffed in the future. I thought of this idea after asking you guys in a poll recently what you wanted to see for updates in the year 2022. A lot of you commented that you wanted a more balanced approach and that you wanted to see old content reworked or made relevant again, and I got thinking about different bosses that could be reworked or buffed or made more viable or just plain better in today's RuneScape, because let's be honest, there's a lot of bosses that are basically dead content. So if you like videos like this, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss another one. We're getting close to 20,000 subscribers, which is insane, so thank you all so much for the support. Now, while Jagex hasn't really been one for reworking bosses in terms of mechanics or drastically changing old bosses, they have either intentionally or unintentionally made bosses more viable in terms of loot. So for instance, Dagannoth Kings. When I did a loot video about Dagannoth Kings back in mid 2020, I made around 40 million GP profit from 1,000 kills, which all things said wasn't too great. Fast forward to April of 2021, Jagex released a new trio of bosses, the Rex Matriarchs. These bosses ended up dropping items used to make new powerful rings such as a Reaver's Ring and Chandler's Rings, but these rings also needed 10 of each Dagannoth King's rings to make them. So for the Reaver's Ring you needed 10 Berserker Rings to make them, and so on. This in turn buffed the price of Dagannoth King drops immensely, and that 40 mil loot from 6 months prior would be worth around 150 mil today, a more than 3 times increase in loot. Seer's Rings went from 65k each and being a dead item to 16 million GP each. The same pretty much happened with Berserker Rings as well. I feel this same logic could be applied to the older, lesser killed bosses to make them a bit more relevant again. Now, I don't think every boss should be 50 or 100 mil GP per hour. I'm not talking about going and making Giant Mole 50 mil GP per hour or anything like that, but just making them less of dead content, which brings me to the first boss that I think could be a good potential candidate to be buffed, which is the Corporal Beast. Now, Corporal Beast is a classic boss, one that most of us have very fond memories of killing pre-EOC or back in the old days. It most notably drops these spirit shields like the Divine, Arcane, Elysian, and Spectral spirit shields, and these shields were once some of the most powerful items in RuneScape, but since EOC came out, they quickly faded into irrelevance. While Corp's normal drops are pretty fine, you get some Onyx builds, some cannonballs, you'll make a decent 8 to 10 mil an hour. The rare drops are very rare, with the Divine Sigil being 1 in 2,560, and a once sought after drop is very cheap today. What if, like how Dagannoth Kings were made relevant once again, Jagex could do the same for these spirit shields? Now, Dagannoth Kings aren't a huge high level boss that's rivaling Raksha or anything, but they're a decent moneymaker if you happen to go and get a few rings. So what if we could do the same to Corp? What could Jagex do to make this happen? Well, we only have shields up to a maximum of tier 90, while we also have tier 92 armor and now tier 95 weapons. So if Jagex finally decides to release a new tier 92 shield, could the sigils from Corporal Beast be a requirement to make them, kind of following the same strategy as the Rex Matriarchs? If not, maybe they could make the sigils be able to be disassembled to give a rare and new component, to maybe craft new powerful defensive perks or something like that. I think there are a lot of possibilities for this. But I do feel Corp and Spirit Shields could be buffed at least a little bit to make getting those super rare drops from Corp a little more rewarding. Now, Corp isn't super hard to kill anymore. It can pretty easily be AFK'd, but the sigils being so rare, especially the Arcane, Divine, and Elysian, having them be more than 10 to 20 mil for a big drop like this, especially if they had an item sync, I think could be a decent upgrade, but maybe Corp is just too easy of a boss to validate buffing it. What do you guys think? Let me know below. So another boss I feel like could really use kind of a rework in the drop table is the Kalphite King. Now, the Kalphite King is one of the original evolution of combat bosses and one that isn't killed super often anymore, at least for money making. Now, the boss can be soloed, although a bit annoying to solo, and advanced players, meaning high tier PVMers, can get around 35 kills per hour solo based on the PVME Discord. However, the profit for soloing at the highest level is only around 25 mil GP per hour. This may not seem that bad, but if we compare this to a similar boss of a similar difficulty, something like Nex, which in my opinion is even actually easier to solo than Kalphite King, if you're an advanced player, you can get around 25 kills per hour at Nex, which comes out to over 50 mil GP per hour, which compared to Kalphite King, I just feel like Kalphite King is very outdated, especially the normal drops. Take this for example, doing the Arch Glacier on normal mode is probably gonna get you more money in normal drops than doing Kalphite King solo. I mean, look at these drops. We've got Sharks, which just drops 50 unnoted Sharks, which is a very common drop that you're probably not even gonna pick up. And then most of the other drops are seeds, herbs, and things that just aren't expensive at all anymore. Granted, there are drops like Onyx Bolts, that's an okay drop, albeit kind of rare, and a few herb drops worth 100k or 200k, but most of Kalphite King's normal drops are pretty cheap, and this would be okay if the unique drops were very expensive, but the whole drop table is basically based off getting Drygores, which itself aren't very expensive anymore, seeing as a lot of Nex's drops are more common and worth much more than these, like the Torva pieces. I think possibly updating the Kalphite King common drop table to be more in line with other bosses being released today could be a good way to make it relevant again. I mean, the boss is harder to solo than Nex, it has cheaper rare drops, and the normal drops are nowhere near as good as Nex. So what do you guys think about the Kalphite King? Should it be buffed to be more in line with the GP per hour of something like a Nex, or should it stay as is? Let me know below. And finally, we have the Queen Black Dragon. Now, the QBD is by no means a high-level boss. It's definitely on the easy side now. The normal drops and most of the drops are just laughable with how long the boss actually takes to kill. If we look at the drop table, the Royal Crossbow pieces are pretty much worthless at 80k each. This isn't too surprising since there are much better weapons, and I don't really expect any of the unique drops to be buffed or changed. All of the uniques from QBD are pretty cheap, and that's probably how they're gonna stay. However, the normal drops are even worse. I remember when QBD actually used to be a pretty decent place to go during double XP weekend because it drops a lot of seeds and what used to be ores and bars before the mining and smithing rework. But since that rework, since seeds are very cheap now and ores were replaced with stone spirits, things like dragon stones are being devalued from Elder God Wars dropping a ton of them, the drop table is just very, very lackluster. I mean, let's look at the first half of the drop table. Not a single drop over 10k. I know Slayer creatures that drop better than this. And then if we go to the more rare drops, the only few drops that are really anything to write home about are Grimy Lantidimes and Onyx Bolt Tips. Of course, there's a Draconic Visage being 1 mil as a rare drop, but that's not even really the biggest problem with QBD. Maybe if you could kill the QBD super fast, the drop table would be okay, but when killing the QBD, you have to sit through a 15 to 20 second animation of QBD waking up from her slumber before starting each and every kill. Now, this might not seem like a lot over the course of an hour, but if you're doing 50 or 60 kills an hour, this is almost a third of your kill time just spent sitting there that could be saved and could result in you getting more kills and getting more loot. If this animation was removed or it could be toggled off, you could kill QBD probably around 30% faster and get 30% more kills, which could make up a bit for the lack of loot. What do you guys think about QBD? I sort of am lost with this one. I'm not sure about how the loot can really be buffed, nor do I think QBD should be amazing GP per hour, but the animation is probably one of the most annoying parts of killing the QBD, having to spend half your kill time just sitting there, so I think that's something that can definitely be changed. What do you guys think? So that's gonna do it for this video. What do you guys think? Do you think these bosses should be buffed? Do you think they should stay the same? Are there different bosses you guys think should be buffed? I'd love to know your thoughts. This was kind of a little fun idea I thought of in kind of going back and looking at some of the older bosses. I know bosses age and, you know, things get worse and worse, like God Wars 1 is never going to be as good as God Wars 2, and God Wars 2 is never going to be as good as Elder God Wars. That's just how it is with power creep, but I do think maybe some bosses can be tweaked or changed a little bit to just make them a little bit less of dead content. Not saying these are totally dead content, but you know, based on where money making is with bossing today, they are pretty bad and usually rank pretty low on boss lists. So let me know what you guys think. If you like the video, make sure to leave a like, and thank you for all the support lately, and I'll see you all in the next video.